Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the cooldown room for the Russian Grand Prix. Yes, it's the post-race stream with a brand new name. Basically, Jonty, myself and Chain Bear, we're going to sit here and just give our reaction to it. Not try and overanalyze things too much, but just get straight into that initial reaction, which you guys seem to enjoy so much. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go over the full result in a moment. We'll, of course, be talking about the Grand Prix as a whole and those team orders. Ferrari's pace has disappeared this weekend. We'll also cover that and have come to you guys, and we'll discuss it as well, our driver of the day and 3-word race reports. But let's kick this off, as we always do in these streams, by going through that initial race result. As far as I know, this will be the final result. Nothing being investigated by the stewards, but I will keep an eye out on Twitter as ever. It was Lewis Hamilton who took the victory today, with Valtteri Bottas in second place in the other Mercedes. It's a 1-2, a dominant weekend for the team, but not all as it seems, as we're going to go over in a little bit. Sebastian Vettel third place for Ferrari, with Kimi Raikkonen well back in fourth. Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, fantastic recoveries, 18th and 19th on the grid. Verstappen 19th, of course. They recovered to 5th and 6th. Not a great surprise. I think many of us expected them to recover to that, but some really good racing, particularly from Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc, very good drive from him. He started 7th, finished 7th, and that's despite being passed by both Red Bulls. That's best of the rest for him. Really good drive and a cracking overtake on Kevin Magnussen as well, who finished in 8th place. Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez were involved in their own little team orders battle with the team, of course. But eventually Esteban Ocon let back through to finish in 9th with Sergio Perez in 10th. Romain Grosjean came home, as I said in the watch-along, I think disappointed he will be, with P11 having started in the points. Nico Hülkenberg started 12th and finished 12th, tried to go long on strategy. Didn't really work out in the end for him, but he was closing in a bit on Grosjean towards the end of the race, but not really ever a threat. Marcus Ericsson in 13th place for Sauber. From 10th on the grid, of course. Fernando Alonso recovered, if you like, to 14th from, I believe, 17th on the grid. Lance Stroll 15th, Stoffel Van Dorn 16th, Carlos Sainz 17th, and Sergei Sirotkin in 18th. The last I heard from, well, not heard from Force India, the last I saw on their Twitter feed on Gasly and Hartley was that they were still investigating the mechanical issue. If anybody knows in chat, do let us know. I'm sure the lads will let me know as well. If not, I'll keep an eye on Twitter and see if we get anything on that. But they are the only 2 retirements from the Russian Grand Prix. So, I think we'll hop straight into it then and say a very good afternoon. It is afternoon. It's only 3 o'clock. Hello, Jonty.
Yes, hello everyone. It's nice to be quite early, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's lovely and early. I like those. Even earlier next weekend, mate. That's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah, Japan. Forgot about that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Lots of coffee, I think. And also, a very good afternoon and welcome back to Steward, Mr. Chain Bear, sir. Hello.
Hello, how's it going today?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. What did you reckon to that one, the Grand Prix? Was it? I mean, it wasn't the most thrilling, was it? But I mean, it wasn't awful.
No, it was a fine race. There were some interesting strategies at play. A little bit of on-track racing include between the title challenges, and a bit of controversy. So, what else could you ask for?
Exactly. What about you, Jonty? What do you think to the race?
Yeah, it was all right by Russian standards and by the standards of a few other races this year. It was more the armchair nerd watchers excitement.
That's a really good way of putting it. I think I kind of said that in the watch along. It's not Baku crazy. It's not Bahrain brilliant, but as far as you could, when you consider last year in Russia, outside of the first lap, we got 1 recorded on-track overtake. At least we got some overtaking. I mean, we'll talk about him in a bit, but Max Verstappen doing a fine job. So we're going to jump straight on, really, and kind of go straight to the elephant in the room, if you like, and that's Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton taking the win, of course, but some controversy, Jonty, I think is the right way to put it, with team orders. Initial reaction to that, where did you stand when you saw Bottas stopping effectively at turn 13 to let Lewis through?
I hated it. I've always said that I dislike team orders. I can understand it, but I don't think it was necessary.
I think that's something a lot of people are saying, isn't it, Stuart? That they understand from a team perspective, but from a fan perspective, it's not really what we want to see. But this is a team game at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is a team game. And if you're a cold calculating machine and you do everything you need to do to get both titles in the bag, sure, this is what you do. But you're also part of a bigger sport, and you have to serve both of your drivers, including Valtteri Bottas, who did everything he needed to do to at least challenge for the win. We'll never know if he would be able to hold on to the win or if Lewis would have been able to make a move on it. It looked like he wouldn't. But yeah, I think it was it put a sour note on the whole race.
Yeah, because Bottas, to that point, you take into account qualifying and obviously his form around Russia anyway, he'd been solid and, all right, he wasn't getting the move done on Max, but he was catching him. He's got the faster car, the more powerful engine down that long straight, a bit of DRS, Jonty, and he could have got the job done. So I think for me, maybe this is just my opinion, but I think it's more that it doesn't feel really necessary in terms of the championship. It would have been 1-2 for the team anyway, which is what they've always said is the priority. Even if Lewis finishes in second place, he's 43 points up the road. I understand it from a team perspective, but it wasn't really necessary, was it?
No, absolutely. I saw a tweet from Daniel Abt, who put it the best, saying you've got 2 drivers who are both unhappy. The only headlines from the race are the political ones, and fans were robbed of a great race between title contenders. Is that worth 7 points?
That's it, isn't it? It's I'm going to say it many times, and I'll probably say it in the debrief tomorrow. I understand it. I completely understand it. I said it about a number of things. I said it after Q2 yesterday. From a team perspective, despite the farce that fans felt that was, it makes sense from a team perspective, So, and you have to look at that. It is a team sport, but it's not really. it's not really what we want to see as fans. And I like what you say there about how we were robbed of that title battle. But when you take that into account, Stuart, obviously Sebastian Vettel is catching Hamilton at that point. He's got a blister on his tyre, has Lewis, and obviously being behind Valtteri, that's not helping him. They're just looking at the bigger picture, aren't they? And trying to make sure that they get that 1-2.
Yeah, didn't quite catch that, mate.
I think we're having Discord issues. Can you hear me now? Yeah, they're having Discord
Yeah, I
issues.
can't understand. I don't know if the stream's going well, but I can't hear you. I can only hear robots.
I'll drop out for a second. Just sometimes it does this on Discord. It's the unique way it likes to work. See if that's working. I think that might be working now, according to the thing.
Yeah, loud and clear.
There we go.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. I was just saying, Stuart, that with the blistering on Hamilton's tyres, they're looking at the bigger picture, aren't they, Mercedes? So, as frustrating as it is for us, it's kind of makes sense, annoyingly.
Yeah, and I can sort of see that, and I could see they thought they were under threat from Vettel. But then the flip side argument to that is, why didn't they switch them back when he was out of danger? There's a big difference between taking a win from your teammate and a lot of other things, including maybe taking a second place or putting, if the win isn't on the cards, putting Valtteri's strategy in an awkward position to kind of play games with pit stops or block off other cars. But to take away a win that he earned is a very different thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, do you think they should have let him back through then?
I think it would have been the fair thing to do, and I think that's what Hamilton wanted. Hamilton didn't even want to swap places. If you heard his press conference interview.
Yeah, and ultimately, whichever order they finish in, it's 43 points for the team, isn't it? And that's when you listen to Mercedes over the last few years, they often talk about how, they don't worry about the Drivers' Championship. Their priority is getting that Constructors one. So 43 points to them is 43 points. So, I've seen a couple in chat saying, they want to get Lewis that championship, but, maybe they do, and maybe that's Valtteri's role. But the team comes first, and that's what they're always saying. So 43 points is 43 points, whatever order they finish in. But I think they could have switched him at the end. I don't think it would have made any difference, really. Obviously, points-wise, it does to Lewis's championship, but he's still 43 points up the road. Vettel is probably not going to catch him at 43 points. He almost certainly isn't at 50, unless we get a couple of crazy races, Jonty. It just, like I said to you earlier, it just feels unnecessary, and I get it. A lot of people comparing this to Austria 2002. Nowhere near that bad. But there's quite an uneasy feeling. And as you were saying, you've got two unhappy drivers. Hamilton didn't want to do it. Bottas certainly didn't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, the only person who's really suffered from this are the fans and Bottas. And that's not really a great way to go about it. They haven't clinched either of the titles today. So, yes, they're trying to work towards that, but it hasn't been the deciding factor. So, that's the only way I can put it. It's just needless.
And ultimately, Ferrari didn't have the pace this weekend either, did they? I was doing the watch-along and watching the timings, and yeah, Vettel every now and again would take a couple of tenths and get a little bit closer in traffic, or he was closing in on Hamilton when he was in the dirty air of Bottas. But, Vettel got the jump on Hamilton in the pit stops and couldn't maintain the position. So Ferrari obviously didn't have the pace. So that's another reason why I kind of feel like it's unnecessary.
Yeah, very much so. Ferrari really didn't have the chance to take the win here. So they should have just been happy with what they got, keep everyone happy, including their drivers. Because, we've only got a week to go till Japan. What kind of mindset is Bottas going to be in by the time he gets there?
Yeah. It's only a week away, isn't it? Wow. It's all coming thick and fast now this season, isn't it? But in terms of the championship, Stuart, obviously this is all about initial reaction. I'll try and obviously get to some more when we get some reaction from the drivers tomorrow in the debrief. But in terms of the championship, 50 points. 40 was big, but 50 is just. Can you see him turning that around, or he's going to need the biggest swing in years in Formula One, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's definitely Hamilton's to lose now, and he's very much got 1.5 hands on that trophy. And it's not just 50 points; it's 50 points and 25 points left up for grabs with one less race to go. I think he can win it in three races. have to do the math on that one. But yeah, and again, the fact that it's so much in his grasp makes what happens so much more unnecessary.
Yeah, and it's 50 points, isn't it? And we all talk about that, but it's I don't think it's just the points. The Ferrari, they turned up with upgrades this weekend that didn't work compared to the Mercedes. They don't look like they've got the outright fastest car that we all thought they did after the summer break. And Vettel, maybe it's just me, but obviously both of you feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong, but when I watch Vettel in press conferences and interviews, he looks defeated.
Yeah, he's not talking with the sort of fighting spirit of someone who thinks he's still in the fight. That's not the impression you get from him when talking. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it seemed only a few episodes of these Sunday streams ago that we were talking about Ferrari and Vettel still having the best package in hand, and it was, they were behind in the points, but it's still their championship to lose, and Mercedes were going to have to fight for every point. But after the summer break, it really hasn't gone that way, and I think Ferrari just haven't got that momentum back since Vettel hit the wall in Germany.
That was the blow, wasn't it, psychologically, Jonty? That for me, that crash in Germany, that was the moment it really started to go wrong, just psychologically for Vettel.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment. Similar to Singapore last year, just that big DNF that really just puts his mind to rest of, that's it, I'm done.
I mean, he's still saying all the right things, isn't he? He's come out afterwards and said, he's still got hope of the title, but he doesn't sound confident in what he's saying. And I think, yes, 2 DNFs for Hamilton and the championship's back on, but where are those DNFs going to come from? Unless he makes a huge mistake, which in the mindset that he's in at the moment, I can't see Hamilton making that mistake. And that Mercedes, all right, Austria aside, has been as bulletproof as the Ferrari this year. So I can't see how those 2 DNFs are going to come. And, ultimately this weekend, he had the championship in his own hands, Vettel. He just, quote, had to win the last 6 races, regardless of what Hamilton's done. And he's world champion, but now he needs a lot of luck and a lot of help from Mercedes, really, Jonty, and I can't see it coming.
Yeah, it's only luck that can make the difference now, unless Ferrari do some incredible upgrade in 2 days. I can't see it happening.
What about the constructors then, Stewart? Because Ferrari, Kimi's been really consistent this year, and it surprised me massively. He's I thought he was done. I thought he'd had enough. When you look at him in the winter, I thought that's it. He's just here for the paycheck. But proved me wrong. Another one that's done it this year, and he's been massively consistent. Do you think Ferrari could maybe put the focus on that now? And if Vettel is still in the championship fight come Abu Dhabi and he can go for it, fair enough. But that constructors title, it would be something. And really, when you consider the car that they've had this season, all right, not as fast as we thought it was, but you'd say they should be right in there to the end.
You'd hope so. My concern is that not only are the top 3 teams miles ahead of the rest of the pack, they've actually started to sort of separate a bit from each other in this second half of the year. Red Bull seems very clearly the 3rd team, and Ferrari are sort of just not bringing it to Mercedes at the moment. Despite sometimes seeing like this will be their track, as we thought in Singapore, we thought they'd have the edge and then it just disappeared. And here we thought they might be able to bring it and they didn't. So yeah, they are going to have to get Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel pulling some moves on the Mercedes, which are both looking very fighty right now.
Yeah, it's a big weekend in Japan for Ferrari, and the Mighty Dashers just put it in chat, I was just going to say, but next weekend is predicted to be wet all weekend, pretty much, or mixed conditions, I think, is the official forecast. So that's going to suit Lewis even more, isn't it, Jonty? So it's not going to get any easier for Ferrari from here, but I do want to ask you this, I'm going to ask you both this one very quickly. Vettel's defensive move on Hamilton, right decision by the stewards not to punish that?
Yes. Yeah, because he didn't have any part of his car even close to being alongside. So, and it wasn't totally 2 moves. It was kind of a move that half stopped but carried on. Do you know what I mean? I hate to be defending him, but it's definitely the right decision.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Stewart? Do you think it was common sense prevailing from the FIA for a change?
Yeah, very much. I wouldn't have punished it either. I think hard but fair racing is what we need. And we've heard like a lot of people complaining that the FIA have come down too hard and made people, I don't know if it's actually affected their psychology, but it made people afraid to make moves in case they get penalised if it goes wrong. I mean, it could have been an accident, but I think, they're both good racers and they both fought hard and fair and used the space of the track that they needed to. Same with Magnussen, actually. His looked a bit more aggressive, but they were both pretty fair moves.
Yeah, and we want aggressive racing, don't we? We're not. I said it in the watch along. We're not here to watch a procession. I know we get them sometimes. Singapore was a little bit like that, or very much like that. But we want to see hard racing. And Vettel goes super defensive, has a little bit of a moment in turn 13, which sets it all up anyway. So there you go. I didn't think it was a penalty at the time. I would have gone bananas. That's what I'm going to say on the watch along if he got that penalty, because I did not think for a second it was. It's aggressive racing. It's what we want to see, and that's it at the end of the day. We want lots of overtaking. One man who was massively aggressive today, and we're going to have to talk about him a fair whack, I think, is Max Verstappen, Jonty. I mean, what did you make of that performance? What was he, 19th on the grid and came through to 5th by about lap 8 or 9?
Yeah, it was a stunning performance. I mean, when they're showing the replays of his start, he got one of the best starts I've ever seen. He just went. He got past 2 cars, I think, before actually passing the start line. It was unbelievable. And I think he made 6 places in the first lap. Absolutely incredible.
It was. I know he's got like the 3rd fastest car, but to gain that many positions that quickly, like I say, I think it was about lap 8 or something like that, to be up to 5th place is that's not just having a faster car.
No, very much so. That's being able to make the aggressive moves, but in the right way, which is the big difference to how he was doing things at the start of the year. He was really making those hard moves at the right time instead of just launching something when there was a tiny sniff of a gap. And it's quite clear to see the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, when you go back to the start of the year and you compare him to now, he's not changed his driving style, has he, Stewart? But he's matured so much. He seems more under control, if that makes sense, or at least his moves are more calculated. He's not taking unnecessary risks. He's taking the right risks.
Yeah, I mean, well, he turned 21 today, so he became an adult and completely changed overnight, is what happened. But no, yeah, it was an astonishing performance right through the race, in fact. And yes, I mean, we can't pretend that his car is one of the 3 cars that is a floor and above the rest of the pack, but this is not an easy track to overtake on. As we saw with Grosjean a couple of laps ago, if you step out of line on that big left-hander, you can easily lose balance and go off the road. He positioned his car extraordinarily well. He was braking he didn't lock up. He got himself right in the braking zone when he needed to make moves that he needed to do. Yeah, it was very, very well judged, moved through the field, and then he had, pretty good pace when he was leading as well.
Gave us some action. That's what we want to see. And as you said there, that car is comfortably the 3rd best on the grid, or one of the best 3 on the grid. But he was quicker getting through the field than his teammate, and Daniel Ricciardo is often applauded for his overtaking ability. So I was really impressed by Max, and I keep saying I've been impressed with him since Canada. The start of the season he had was poor. He was making mistakes. He got a boot up his backside from Red Bull after Monaco, and then Canada onwards he's cracked on, kept his head down, and really, really delivered for them, and completely deserves the praise he's getting for it.
Yeah, 100%. I think it shows he's willing to listen and willing to learn and develop himself. I think we see in these young drivers, they're very desperate to get results, to prove themselves, to show they can make it. He did an interview earlier in the week, I think, with Sky, where he said, he wanted 4 championships by the time he was 30. So he's definitely hungry to start making moves towards his ambitions. But he's learning that he doesn't have to do it at every corner, and that he doesn't have to take every opportunity, even if it's the very slightest one. He's being much more mature about it and making the moves he needs to make when he needs to make them, as Jonty said.
Definitely. I've got not a moan, but I am going to ask the question, Jonty. Why didn't they go hypersofts at that final? What was it, 10 laps to go? And all right, it was going to be a big ask to catch Kimi, but the hypersofts would have been second a lap quicker and could have done it.
I have no idea why they didn't go hypers. It's clearly the better choice. A lot of people have struggled with the life of them at the start of the race, but when you got to the end of the race, then 90 kilos less fuel, it's really not as much of an issue. They're going to last at least 4 or 5 laps longer. They're going to be 2 seconds a lap faster, and there was no threat coming from behind. I was very, very surprised to see Red Bull make that call. They're pretty much the only ones that we can rely on to make the smart tyre calls, and they let us down today. And they certainly let Max down. He really did have a genuine chance at the podium.
Yeah, it's like you say, less fuel on board. The track's rubbered in a bit more, hasn't it? So, and the others aren't pushing as much. So, it would have been nice to see them go hypers. I mean, I kind of understand in a way. He's pushed that car up to 5th. It would have been, even with the hypers, a big ask to catch and pass Kimi Räikkönen in the time left. But do you think part of it is that they're looking already towards Mexico? Do you think they're thinking, let's not put any more strain through this engine than is necessary?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it is a big concern for Red Bull. We know, we've seen that all year. But, yeah. Do they really want to be putting that much emphasis on saving the engine when there's that many more points to be gained? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was just putting a question out there, but I suppose thinking about it, you also don't really want, as a fan against Steward, you don't want to see teams doing that. You want them to take each race as it comes. But from a Red Bull perspective, they weren't expecting to be strong here. And again, I think they've really surprised with their pace. They're not expected to be strong in Japan. So Mexico's their next target, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I am very skeptical about them being able to go for the win in Mexico. But and to be honest, like to answer your previous question, I don't think they'd be thinking about the engines either, because I think it's clear that even if they change all their engine components, they can still come 5th and 6th and grab a whole bunch of points in the constructors that they're not really challenged in. So they're not. I don't think they're super bothered by rinsing through engines at this point in the championship. Just to add a point on why they didn't pick the hypersofts, I would lean towards trusting Red Bull's models of the tyres. And them talking about the hypersoft tyres, it seemed that even though they were less on fuel, if they pushed hard on them, which is what Verstappen was going to have to do, they wouldn't have gone the last 10 laps. They would have fallen off after about 5 laps and started blistering and overheating and falling apart. So he wouldn't have been able to challenge for those full 10 laps, even if the first 4 or so laps were incredibly fast. So I think that's why they went ultra softs, which is the same reason that the top 2 teams went ultras in Q2 so that they'll be able to push a decent amount and go a decent distance at the beginning of the race.
Was it? I didn't know the degradation was going to be that bad on the hypers. Obviously, it wasn't great from the start of the race, but I thought on the lighter fuel they might be all right. But that's thanks for that. I honestly didn't realise that one. So that's yeah. I will ask you, but we're going to stay with the Red Bull side of things for a moment. But I will ask you both this: any word on what's happened at Toro Rosso? Because the last I read, they just pulled them out of the race for precaution because they had something wrong with the car which caused them both drivers to spin. They didn't want to take the risk, but I didn't see anything, whether it's a suspension problem or a brake problem.
I haven't seen anything yet. I've had an eye on Twitter, but nothing's come through yet, especially not from Toro Rosso themselves.
No, we were actually quickly talking about this before we came on in the waiting room, and it's very, very odd. I'm going to assume it's something suspension related.
A couple in chat, Haley and 17F, saying brake failure.
Some people on Twitter have said brake failure, but I that might be a assumption, sort of based on the lockups and that ended up spinning them out. But it could be a number of things. It could be what Jonty said. It could be suspension, or it could be part of the power unit locking up the. It could be a number of things. As we know, the energy recovery system helps with the braking. So if that fails, that could end up locking the tires. There's a lot of things that could sort of throw it into a spin at this point.
A few in chat now saying apparently Gasly has confirmed it was a brake issue in an interview after the race. So that would explain. I mean, from a safety side of things, makes sense. I mean, they weren't. Honda Power's been all right this weekend. Gasly's shown some good speed, but they weren't going to be, for me, knocking on the door of the points. So it's not worth the gamble, is it, Jonty, really?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
We'll move on from Red Bull because there is another man We spoke about a bit on the channel this year. His name's Charles Leclerc. Don't know if you've heard of him. What a move, Jonty, on Kevin Magnussen round the outside of turn 3. Magnussen's super aggressive, but Leclerc not giving an inch.
No, that was brilliant, ballsy stuff. Just kept his foot planted all the way around the outside. That was fantastic. That was like, here we go, old head again. Mansell going around the outside of Parabolic in the 90s. It was awesome.
A great move, wasn't it, Stewart?
I was astonished when I watched it, because this isn't Max Verstappen in a Red Bull overtaking a Force India. This was a Sauber taking on a Haas car around the outside. I have no idea where he found the momentum to get that round, but that was excellent planning, excellent execution, brilliant. Can't wait to see him in a Ferrari.
He's going to be. I'm really looking forward to next year. I really am. Can't wait to see him take on Sebastian Vettel and see what he can do. Because at the minute, he's dominated Ericsson, but we are comparing him to Ericsson. So it'll be great to see how he does against a 4-time world champion. But that move, it was one of the highlights of the race for me. Really, really deserved. And it's against Magnussen, who was having one of his punchier days, wasn't he? So it was a bit of a risk. But like you say, Haas versus Sauber, pretty evenly matched. But where's that Sauber pace come from this weekend, Jonty? Because they really have, or appear to have this weekend, stolen a march on Haas and Force India, and that's big points for 7th place, best of the rest, the winners of the midfield this weekend.
Yeah, they've certainly jumped up massively, and I really didn't see that coming. Even in the first practice, they weren't that up there. It is a surprise. I'm going to guess there's something aero-related, because it's still the same engine that Ferrari and Haas are using. So whatever solution they've come up with, it's very, very clever, and it's working.
Yeah, it's great to see. And that midfield fight, Stuart, between now and the end of the season, if the title's done and people are turning off because of that, don't turn off. That midfield fight, that second championship, if you like, is going to be so tight right to the end.
It really is. It's kind of in two little bunches now, isn't it? There's the Renault, well, I was going to say Renault, Haas, McLaren, but McLaren are sort of just floating around on their own. So you've got your Renaults and Haas's locked together, and then you've got Force India, Toro Rosso and Sauber all very, very close. And a few more days like this for Sauber, they could get as high as 7th. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what Force India can do with the rest of the year. They are obviously pretty strong, but you never know with Charles Leclerc at the wheel.
Yeah, he's showing he can deliver. And on Force India, actually, Otmar Safnauer said afterwards that they have to outscore McLaren by an average of 5 points in every race between now and the end of the season. He says it's very achievable. Jonty, think that is easily achievable.
All they have to do is not crash, and they've got it.
Definitely. We'll talk about Force India quickly, actually. Well, whilst we covered team orders with Mercedes, this is kind of the other side of team orders almost, with the team deciding to give Perez a crack at trying to get past Magnussen, so they swapped the drivers over. Then when he couldn't do it, they swapped them back. I'm not a big fan of team orders. As I said at the start, I understand why it's there and understand why the teams do it, but that's, if you've got to do it as a midfield outfit, that's the way to do it. I think I said it before, Jonty, working together.
Yeah, it was great to see. I mean, I'm going to be pretty sure that Perez wasn't happy about it, and neither was Ocon. But at least they, made it work together. Let him through. He'll have a crack. If he can't get it done, he'll let the first one back through. And that's how the team orders should be worked. That's a good way of using it. I mean, it sounds a bit of a contradiction to what we were saying earlier, but it's a lot more fair, and it's a lot better for the team. I don't see why other teams can't make things like that work.
Yeah, we are sort of contradicting what we said earlier, but I think we all agree we don't like them, but if they have to be part of the sport, certainly in the midfield, that's the right way to go about it, Stuart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very much in favour of that kind of tactic. F1 is a team sport. It's a very sort of weird team sport in that sense, but it's, clearly Ocon was stuck for a while and Perez thought he was faster. And I think the important thing also was they communicated to both drivers what was happening. It's like, you've got 3 laps left to try and get past. If not, we'll let Sergio have a crack. And then to Sergio, they said, if you still haven't got past by the next lap, we're going to swap you around again. Everyone, I think, even if the drivers didn't like conceding their position, they understood what was happening, and they understood that both drivers had a fair crack at it. And it's things like this, and maybe things like sort of mixing up strategies to kind of get the team in the best position are perfectly fine, especially if you communicate to your drivers why it's happening and why it's fair. Which isn't really what happened with Mercedes either.
Were you surprised that Force India couldn't challenge Magnussen or couldn't get past?
I was actually. It was weird. They were very, very close, and maybe the cars are just too close, in strength to get through that dirty air. Because Sochi is a very strange track like that. But I was surprised. Magnussen wasn't having the best race of his life, and those Force Indias are bloody strong cars. So, yeah, I was amazed that neither of them could make anything of it.
Yeah, I was, because I kind of felt like the lap that Magnussen delivered in qualifying was really solid and kind of came out of nowhere almost. So he was punching above his weight a little bit in terms of pace this weekend. Maybe the car was higher than I was expecting it to be. Kind of maybe where Grosjean was, 9th place, 9th and 10th was what I expect from Haas this weekend. And Force India, up to qualifying, looked like they had the pace over Haas. So I was quite surprised as well that they didn't get the move done. What about you, Jonty?
It was a little bit surprising because they have been very, very quick through the almost straight sections. So I was expecting them to be able to get the move done using DRS quite easily. Perhaps that one close chance that Ocon had, which caused him to back out of it with the strong defence, may have affected his tyres a bit more than he thought. That affected his pace, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a couple in chat. Just trying to find out what it was then. Motorsport Tube says Haas is dropping off a bit now. They're another one in the midfield that have switched their focus, Jonty, to next season. I think most of the midfield have. I think Force India confirmed it as well after the race today that the focus on next year. So that's why this midfield fight is going to be so good, because maybe, I think Charles Leclerc has said it as well, that Sauber have focused on next year. So nobody in the midfield, by the look of it, is going to be bringing too much more development between now and the end of the season. So this tight scrap is what we've got to the end of the year.
Yeah, unless one of the midfield teams, like Sauber, for example, is telling a few porkies and they still are bringing good development, and they're just trying to make the other teams think that they're not, so that they can steal a load of points and positions in the last few races.
Oh, is that tinfoil hat time? Love a bit of tinfoil hat time. But driver of the day, we've already talked about him. Max Verstappen was voted by the fans. You guys in chat start popping your driver of the day, and this for me is the easiest one we've had for a while in Formula One, 100%. And I don't tend to go with the official driver of the day, but 100% for me, Max Verstappen, driver of the day. What about you, Jonty?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can to some extent take the speed of the car over the midfield out of it because it's Sochi and difficult to overtake. You know, he's really had to do the work.
Yeah, do you agree, Stewart, or is there somebody else for you?
I mean, I do agree. But I'm going to give a shout out to Charles Leclerc, who put in a very solid race, had that amazing overtake, and held that 7th position. Very good day for him.
Yeah, I was going to say Charles Leclerc would be my second. I'd probably give Daniel Ricciardo third, to be honest, because, all right, beaten by his teammate quite comfortably, but he has some front wing issues, of course, but he still came from 18th on the grid to 6th, so yeah, I think that would be a good 3 for me. But I'm going to just read some of these from chat before we get on to the next bit. Ellie says Max easily. KJ says Verstappen. Neek says Bottas. We've got our usual Maldonado and Ericsson's coming in. Robert McPhee says Charles Leclerc. Astro says Verstappen, driver of the day. Ultimate Legend, Verstappen. Thor Leclerc. Let's scan through some more. Ryan says Verstappen, Max or Charles for Carlton. Let's see what else we've got. Bottas says Theo. I think a few will say Bottas. He was a little bit robbed today, I think is the way to put it, or I will put it anyway. Definitely, in quote mark, says Armand's Hamilton. Yeah, a lot of love out there for Leclerc and for Max today. I think they were the standout performers. Throw Ricciardo in there as well. And, Bottas, prior to the team orders, you could have thrown him in there as well. He's still driven well, hasn't he, to be fair, Jonty? All weekend.
Yeah, I was just going to say he would be driver of the weekend because he has been quick from the first green light.
A few saying the Russian president, something I've had a lot of this weekend, weirdly. Gasly says Mario Master. K-Mag says Varun. But yeah, I think it is mostly Ricciardo's, Verstappen's, and Leclerc's, which I think is about right, to be honest. So, yeah, it's I can't really argue with it. I always try and look at the other side and look at other standout performers, but I think they are the three, unless there's somebody you can think off the top of your head, Stewart, that maybe deserves a shout as well.
No, I think that just about sums it up. There are lots of people who had very sort of solid races, but those were definitely the standout drivers of the day.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Jonty, you got anybody you want to throw in there?
There wasn't really anyone else to stand out, in my opinion, apart from the bit the commentators missed right at the very end. Van Dorn mugging Sainz when they were getting overtaken by Lewis. It was brilliant. That's definitely a trick that he's picked up from Alonso along the way.
Classic Alonso move. Brilliant. I will say, actually, I was quite disappointed with Grosjean, particularly given the pace of Magnussen, or that he showed in the race. I thought Grosjean will certainly be disappointed with 11th and should have been pushing for a point, or at least a couple of points.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, I'm trying to work out now whether you're really disappointed with him or hoping that Dan's watching.
If Dan was here, it'd be for banter. But I am a little bit disappointed. I thought, I've bigged him up a little bit these last few weeks on how he's performed in the last few races, and talking about how K-Mag has dropped off over the last 2 races, maybe 3, but he just didn't really. His lap in qualifying was all right, but I thought he might have done a bit more.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, if Dan was here, it'd be fully for banter, and I'd be talking about how terrible he was all weekend, which obviously is not true, but we've got to wind him up. The other thing we like to do on these cool-down rooms, that's a lot of notifications, is over on Twitter. I did pop a tweet out asking you guys for your 3-word race reports. I got a lot. I'll come to you two, so get thinking. Stuart and Jonty, I'll come to you for yours in a minute. RC says Merc Team Orders. F1 Noob says Max No Hypers. The F1 Life, I'm guessing Sam from the F1 Life, says Bland, Monotonous and Swapgate. Ocon Beats Perez says Jack Chambers. He also says Valtteri, it's James. I do usually only give you one each, but you sent me a nice message earlier, so you get 2. Half rate for Valtteri says Artie. Let's scroll down a little bit further to some earlier ones. Justice for Bottas says Rosie. Left rear blister. That's a good one. Did you see Jonty Bottas inspecting Hamilton's car afterwards?
Yeah, it looked like he was making sure that there really were blisters there.
I just thought it was quite amusing. Victor says Mercedes, new Ferrari. Vettel have lost, says... I can't read your name, I'm so sorry. Too many, yeah. Let Hamilton pass, says Zen. Please don't moan, says Morton. God says... not bad, actually. I agree with that. It wasn't bad when you consider what we had last year in Russia. A few of you saying Justice for Bottas. Leclerc, fantastic drive. That's come from Robotic Hamster. Patrick, is anybody happy? Some seem to be. Ian Rigsby, Bottas deserved win. Valtteri, it's James, says Addy. Kai said that was depressing. And that's from a Verstappen fan as well. Wow. Retire now. Hamilton says Gabriel. I'm going to take 2 more very quickly. 50-point lead says Foxis. And Fraser Lloyd says Team Orders dominate. I can't remember who I went to first last time. So I'm going to go Stewart. What's your 3-word race report?
See, I was thinking Justice for Bottas, but apparently that's too popular. So I was thinking a sour note, because that's how I felt afterwards, watching, especially in the paddock. A sour note.
Oh, that's quite good, actually, yeah. Jonty?
Mercedes cosplay Hungary. Because it's very, very similar to Ferrari's Hungary in 2002.
You mean Austria? They're going to get you in the chat for that.
Yeah.
Was it Austria? I can't remember.
Oh, you've not had another Honda Prius moment, have you? Oh, Jonty, no. The comments. Yeah, was it Austria? It was Austria 2002 where Barrichello stopped on the line. Unless you're thinking of something else, Jonty.
Yeah, it was Austria 2002. It was Hungary last year where Bottas and Hamilton did the old switcheroo, but they switched back. Thumbs up, switch back.
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, Jonty.
I was up early.
We'll let you off. We'll let you off. I'm going to go with the one that was on Twitter that was not too bad. I thought actually, like I said a couple of times, what we got from Russia last year and what we've had in the past was really quite poor. Not really a lot happening. One overtake last year, and this year we got a couple of cars coming through the field. A lot of, like you said at the start, a bit of controversy as well, Stewart. You know, it's what we want from Formula One. Things to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was disappointed with the politics of it, but at the same time, not disappointed because now we've just been like chatting and arguing about it for the last 2 hours. So, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to Q&A in a minute. Just your final thoughts, Jonty, on the race as a whole, or if there's anything else you want to bring to the table that we can discuss. I'm open to suggestions.
No, I think the biggest thing I'm going to take away from the whole political team orders thing is the fact that it's taking the shine off what was an intriguing race more than an exciting one. And that's a shame. We do quite often get these races that still have a lot of engagement to them because we don't know whose tyres are going to last, how quick someone's going to be, and it's still going right to the end. And people aren't going to be able to enjoy that part of it because it's being overshadowed. I think that's something that the teams need to think about with regard to these team orders.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point, isn't it, Stuart? It's going to grab all the headlines, isn't it? When actually it was an all right race.
Yeah, absolutely. If that hadn't happened, or if they'd swapped back, or whatever, you know, if we would have still had plenty to talk about, and I think it would have been. I think it would have been a quite tense, like last act of the race, wondering would Hamilton be able to get past Bottas? Would Bottas be forced to let him through? Yeah, I think there would have been plenty of talking points without this, but now they're all sort of been shuffled to the back of the queue, really, and maybe that'll be just like a small column in the sports pages rather than the main page.
Yeah. Have you got any final thoughts on the race or anything you want to discuss?
I mean, I'm glad that Sochi can deliver an interesting race. We'd got to that point where we just dreaded turning up in Sochi, but actually it showed promise. And I think, you know, with the new front wings that come in next year, just like letting the cars be able to race with each other, you know, next year, I'm optimistic that we can have some more fun. That turn 3 is incredible, and seeing that people can make those moves around the outside and make them stick without flying off into the barrier like Grosjean did, that's exciting and interesting. So, yeah, it's made me more optimistic about Sochi.
Yeah, that's another great point. I agree. It's a race I've never looked forward to it. Apart from the first one, obviously the first time you go to a new race, you're going to watch on TV, you get quite excited. But aside from that, I've never looked forward to Russia at all. But I'm not going to sit and say I'm going to be sat anticipating it next year, but it won't fill me with dread, the idea of watching the Russian Grand Prix next year, knowing that we could get a decent Grand Prix. But we are going to jump to Q&A, but I'm going to kick off with the first question because I can. Jonty, Daniel Kvyat's on his way back to Toro Rosso. Your thoughts on that one?
It's great for him, and hopefully he can get that redemption that he deserves. I just hope the team are very accommodating of him, because it was completely sort of Red Bull as an entity that screwed him over before. So it's down to them to make it right for him.
What about you, Stuart? Do you think it's the right move from Toro Rosso and good for Danny Kvyat?
I think it's definitely the right move for Toro Rosso. They were thin on the ground for driver choices, especially if they weren't going to take people who were contracted to Mercedes. For Daniel Kvyat, I mean, I guess so. If he really wants to be a Formula One driver, then, you know, take the drivers you can get. I really hope he's able to sort of build up from where he left off, learn, mature, and prove himself, and I don't know, kind of have a bit of a Grosjean time. You know, Grosjean took some time off to get himself together and came back to the same team. So yeah, I think it could be good for him and for Toro Rosso, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, Helmut Marko said that when asked what had changed in the whole situation, he said that Daniel had changed, that he'd matured as a driver. So a bit of praise coming from Helmut Marko, something we've not heard about from him regarding Daniel Kvyat. I mean, look, I said in the reaction video that I did, It's an awkward one because I don't want to see him get kicked in the gut again and treated the way he was and the way they treated him last year. He came back for one race while Gasly or Hartley couldn't race, and he scored a point, but he was treated so badly, and the way they treated him was disgusting. But it's an F1 race seat, and like you say, Stewart, you've got to take them when they come along, and I think it's a great shot, as Jonty said there, at redemption. I really do, and I think it's a good move, but I just really hope that either they don't kick him to the curb again, or if they do, he turns enough heads to get a seat somewhere else in Formula 1, because it's with him now. If he delivers at the end of the day, Jonty, what's to stop if one of their drivers has a bad season, a Haas picking him up, for example?
Well, yeah, exactly. This is his best chance. Arguably better than what he had before, when he went sort of up to Red Bull and they used him as the scapegoat, put him back down to Toro Rosso, and then ultimately booted him for not a lot of good reason. Now, with all that behind him, other teams will be paying closer attention to what he's doing. So if he can really pull out good performances, it will raise his stock even higher than it would have been before.
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to be in the frame for a Red Bull seat, is he, Stewart? Really, unless he does something unbelievable in that Toro Rosso. But he could secure himself a midfield seat if it isn't with Toro Rosso in the future.
Yeah, if he does well, he can carve his way up through some other route. I mean, there's always a chance that there's some amazing racer hidden inside of him that we haven't seen the most of yet. But this could be a good opportunity for him. I definitely think, as much as I like Brendan Hartley, I think if Brendan Hartley hadn't taken his seat and Kvyat had continued through this year, they'd probably have a few more points at Toro Rosso.
Yeah. I'm going to start on this question. It's on Formula 2. The Derpy Muffin and I think Nick Hill have asked for our thoughts on F2 this weekend. It's a crushing blow for Lando Norris, isn't it, Jonty? I think now George Russell can win the title at the first race in Abu Dhabi, can't he? That's pretty much done. I think Norris is out of it now, realistically, and George Russell has got a hand on that trophy.
Yeah, he just needs a podium in the feature race at Abu Dhabi, and that's done for Russell. But you do have to say, after having watched both the races, this is quite possibly one of the worst weekends I've seen for any driver in any series that Norris has had. If it could go wrong, it has gone wrong.
McLaren said that they weren't going to put him in any FP1 sessions after the one he did in, was it Italy? I think it was Italy, because they didn't want to interfere with the F2 championship. Do you think perhaps these FP1 sessions and maybe the fact that he knows he's got a seat at McLaren next year has affected him in any way this season? Because he's been, he won the first race of the season, got pole position, and he's been all right. He's been steady all season, and he's shown some really good speed. But this last few races, for me, he just seems to have tailed off a little bit.
For me, he's tailed off from the third race in. I have to be honest. Yeah, he started off and was lightning fast in Bahrain. He was untouchable, and has been slowly degrading ever since. And I don't think it's so much the FP1 sessions. I think it's just the fact that he's got a seat. He's sorted. He doesn't need to worry about the F2 Championship at all now. I think he's focusing too much on that. Maybe relaxing a little, possibly. But it's definitely affecting him. No matter what anyone seems to think, it's definitely affecting him.
Yeah, and Sky talk a lot about Norris versus Russell for the title, but really it has been for a while now. It's been Russell versus Albon, and Albon's had really a phenomenal season, given that he came into the year without a permanent race seat.
Yeah, that's true. And Albon's certainly turned up the wick. He's really come alive in the second half of the season. And ultimately, based on their performances in F2, Russell and Albon are both far more deserving of an F1 seat than Norris is.
Oh, that's one to end on, Jonty. That'll get the debate going in the comments. But I would be disappointed if Russell's not on the grid next year, but I'd be even more disappointed if Ocon's not there. But I think Russell's shown as the F2 winner that he should be given a chance in F1, or not should, because it's not the way it works, is it? But he should at least be considered. And I think Williams are looking at him, but Ocon's still in there, so just not enough seats. And he said it himself, hasn't he? So that's kind of the problem with Formula One. But let's take a couple more questions. Is it the driver or the car, says Fofo Kashi? I'm going to come to you for that one, Stuart, because we kind of ignored you with all that F2 talk there.
That's fine. Is it the driver or the car? Does that mean...
I'm assuming that's the difference.
I mean, that is a very complicated question. I think it's the car first. I mean, as you can see, Leclerc is not winning the championship right now, and I think that's not his fault. But it's the driver that makes the ultimate difference in the end. I would say the car is the hour hand and the driver is the minute hand. And sometimes the driver's enough to push that minute hand so far forward that it's like, this analogy is falling apart. But I think a exceptional driver can win the championship in a slower car. But it's the car that makes the first big step of difference. And then you need a really good driver to overcome any deficit that's in the car. But a lot of the time, the performance between cars, if it's close enough, it'll shift back and forth. And then that's when you sort of see the interplay between driver and car at its finest. As you sort of saw at the beginning of half of this season, when the Ferrari and Mercedes were sort of ebbing back and forth, and Hamilton and Vettel were having good days and bad days, and you never really were quite sure who was going to be on top. But, definitely car first. And we see that in the midfield as well. We see Haas had a great start to the season, and now they're not where they sort of were, and Force India have kind of gone the other way, and now they've got the opportunities that Haas didn't have at the beginning. So, it's tricky.
I'd agree with that. Lewis Hamilton is not going to be winning races and championships in that Williams, ultimately. So I'd completely agree with that. And, you would say that Lance Stroll and Sergei Sorokin in the Mercedes, you could argue they wouldn't be winning the championship, whether they've got the ability to do that, but they'd be winning races.
Yeah, definitely. They'd be having good days. They'd be sort of... I'm trying to think of someone without... I was trying to think of a second driver at like Ferrari or a top team that, without embarrassing them, I didn't want to pick anyone. But they'd be that kind of mediocre second driver type of person in that team. If it was a Sergei and Sorokin lineup at Mercedes, then I think it'd be fair to say that Ferrari would be walking away with this championship.
Yeah, do you agree with all that, Jonty?
Yeah, I mean, someone Chromax just put in the chat saying 70% car, 30% driver. I'd say that's about a fair ratio. It's quite right. We wouldn't see any of the top drivers winning in bottom car and vice versa. I've always thought it'd be very interesting to see. It would never happen for obvious reasons, all the money and what have you involved. But I'd just like to see it reversed. So the Mercedes drivers end up in what's currently the Williams, and all the way up so that the middle two teams just swap over, so it's not that much of a change, and you'd really see the big difference then. It would be very, very cool to see what kind of results they could pull out.
Okay, yeah, I can't disagree with what you're saying. Pennybag says you need to give yourself some credit, Stuart. That was actually a really good analogy.
Oh, thanks. Pennybags? Thanks, Pennybag. Thanks so much.
Red G's asked quite a topical one, I guess. Says team orders with 3-car teams. I think that could be a horrible mix. What are your thoughts? Team orders are bad enough with 2 cars, aren't they, Jonty? The idea of throwing a third one in there would be absolute chaos. But I mean, yeah, thoughts?
Yeah, that would just make things even more messy and complicated. Well, they could do something interesting, like either have inter-team radio so the drivers can talk to each other just in their own team, or maybe have a third car with no radio at all. That'd be fun.
Yeah, Stuart?
I like that Jonty always solves problems by like throwing an absolute wild card of a rule in. I think we touched on this a little bit before when we were talking about third cars at all. I think with team orders, the third driver would always end up as the sacrificial lamb. which, maybe is correct if you're going to use that third car for rookie drivers. Maybe you just have to accept you're going to have to make way for the main championship challenges. It would be interesting. We'd be having a lot of good cool down room discussions. I'm not for third cars in general, but if there were third cars, I think the politics and team orders around that would be absolutely fascinating.
You were actually now asking for our thoughts on 3-car teams, but do you think 3 cars might be where we have to go with Formula One in the long term, Stuart? If they can't get more teams on the grid and we start to lose anybody, is it going to be that hands are forced a little bit?
I can't remember what the rules are. I was more familiar with this around, was it 2008, when all the manufacturers were like leaving en masse and they were like starting to panic. I've got the feeling that if you get down to 9 teams, you start they have to start using 3 cars. I'm still on the side of hoping we don't have to go down 3 car to a 3-car situation. Well, I would be happy with 3 cars if everyone had 3 cars. Let's put it that way. It would make Monaco hilarious, but into 3 cars anytime soon.
Jonty, 3-car teams, thoughts?
Well, you say Monaco would be hilarious. Can you imagine if the person in P1 stacks it through the castle in Baku?
Oh wow, there's an image. There's an online glitch from F1.
We've seen stuff like that in F2 before. We've seen it happen at Monaco. They've had some hilarious incidents there. So it could make for some entertaining chaos, but the chaos of the politics around team orders and whatnot would be a complete nightmare. And not even just that, pit stops. Yes, there are extra garages that can be used, but it would make things very, very awkward. Like we had Germany this year, with that sudden change in weather, everyone comes diving in the pits. You got 3 cars stacked up.
Yeah,
that's a disaster waiting to happen.
I think we all tend to agree that we want a full grid of cars, don't we? But we'd much rather just have more teams.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Although Jonty remind me, it wasn't like until they modernized the pit lane at Monaco. Even with the amount of teams we had, I believe that the lower 4 teams in the championship, they had to put all their equipment up at a car park nearby because there just wasn't the room.
Yeah, I remember that.
I can remember. I don't know, do they still have to do it where they have to wheel the cars down effectively from somewhere else to get them to the pit lane? They used to have to do that, didn't they? Many moons ago.
Yeah, they did, and they still have to do that for the support races now. They're miles away. I think the F2 paddock's something like a kilometre away from the actual pit lane.
Wow.
Yeah, so plenty of problem stuff. Do you also, when they introduced elimination qualifying, do you remember everyone panicking about Q1 in Monaco with 20 cars on track and only 18 minutes to get your lap done, and everyone thought it should be split into 2 because the track couldn't handle it?
Yeah, and that it just traffic's an issue, but it never worked out like that. They've got this habit of panicking, haven't they, teams?
Yeah, 100%. They never. People don't like change anyway.
Nah, I don't like change.
No. But back on the topic, the other way of going it is allowing 1-car teams. That would also be fine.
1-car teams? So like for teams that struggle financially, you mean, sort of giving them the option to stay on the grid with just 1 car?
Yeah, or getting new people in where they've only got that 1 car's money to worry about. And if they do manage to do well, keep it going, the extra revenue they can get from being successful, they can then put out a 2nd car.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. What do you reckon to that, Stuart? Jonty's thrown another curveball.
I've got nothing against that. It's been a while since we had 1-car teams, and I guess that also, you could bring in these independent teams, or if Mercedes and Ferrari actually wanted a genuine B team but just put 1 car in it to bring some drivers up, they could do that. They could manage that and we'd have a bit of politics around that, but that's never a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say on 3-car teams is if we ended up with 10 teams, 3 cars, 30 on the grid, they would have to enforce the 107% rule. They'd have to, like they used to back in day. They'd have to absolutely be strict with it, because otherwise it'd be chaos. But I have just seen it. I'm going to take two. I was going to take one question, but I want to take two. But I've seen one I want to answer because it's something I ponder with regard to Formula 2, Jonty, and getting these champions into Formula 1 when they win the title, like a promotion type thing. And it comes from James Donovan, says, what if the FIA sponsored its own F1 team for young drivers? I always think about that and think, well, why don't they do that? And then, you win the F2 title and then you get put in the FIA car, if you like. The problem with that, mate, is if they get any advantage on track, what's going to happen straight away?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not dredging up the topic, but going back to Tictum's comments. You remember when, with the seeming accusations, being a spec series, it also called into question the FIA because they do all of the scrutineering on the cars. So if literally anything was to seem out of the ordinary with a Formula 1 run team, they would be crucified and there'd be no one watching the race after.
Yeah. Absolutely, because if they suddenly rocked up like, say, Sauber did this weekend and suddenly deliver on pace, everyone's not going to go, oh, they've really ramped up development. Immediately, people are going to go, what have they put on that car that's illegal that they're not sorting out? Or am I being too sceptical, Stuart?
No, I don't think you're sceptical at all. I think if you had an FIA car and an FIA scrutineered series, then yeah, any slight thing that even looked remote. I mean, you'd know what F1 fans are like now. They are hypersensitive and well, okay, hang on. I feel like I'm going to insult a bunch of people, but they are very ready to jump in if they suspect foul play anywhere, if they suspect cheating or misbehaving or not acting sportingly. And yeah, but putting an F1 FIA car in an FIA run sport is a bad move. I wonder if they could subcontract it out in a kind of like the way the government gets publicly run companies. I don't know, but yeah, it would cause mischief.
Yeah, there would be too much finger pointing, wouldn't there? And they'd be under the magnifying glass or the microscope more than any, wouldn't they? So it would be, yeah. I try and think of ways to get these. If you win the F2 title, there should be some reward for that, a guaranteed reward, rather than, sorry, mate, we've not got a seat. Would you like to be our development driver for a year?
Yeah, it does seem particularly, as much as I only have half an eye on F2, that Russell, it's really not clear if he'll be able to move up next year, which seems absurd.
Yeah. What about you, John? Do you think, have you got an idea that maybe we can get these, apart from more teams getting these youngsters in there? Obviously, more teams is the answer, isn't it? But
it really is the only answer, unfortunately. I can't think of anything else.
I think we're going to leave it there. I've done. Go on, Jonty.
It's all right. Something's just come up on Twitter from Pierre Gasly saying that a piece of carbon fibre from Ricciardo's wing actually came up and hit him straight in the visor and ended up in his cockpit, and he had to throw it out a couple of corners later. And he was quite scared, thinking it was going through and into his eye. Interesting. That's a bit scary. Yes, it was only carbon fibre and the helmet is absolutely going to stop it. But what if it hadn't been?
We could open that up now. That's a can of worms we could open up now, Johnny. But I'll tell you what, keep that in your mind, mate. We'll do some more reading on it. That's Wednesday sorted.
Stick another halo on the car.
Yeah, go the other way with it. More halos. No. Yeah. Don't kill me for that one, chat.
Yeah, exactly. And one other point I'd just like to make everyone aware of. Some people don't like two-wheeled racing. Sorry about that, but Anna Carrasco has made history today by becoming the first female champion of any motorbike series.
Yes.
So congratulations there.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, massive congratulations. That's fantastic news. I don't follow a lot of motorbikes. I'm an F1 boy, but yeah, that's awesome news.
yeah, very much. World Supersport 300, taking it in the last race. Brilliant.
Awesome.
There we go. We're going to leave it there because like I was just going to say, I've done a lot of streaming today, and I'm my voice is giving up. But thank you very much once again. Oh, hang on.
I remember seeing something on Twitter. I was just going to follow up to conclude on something we spoke about earlier. Verstappen clarified that he did back off to save the engine, so that confirms a discussion point earlier. That's it.
Oh, there we go. Right, I am going this time. We are going. Thank you very much, Stuart, for coming along and joining in once again. It's been a pleasure and a nice, relaxed chat in the cool down room.
Yeah, no controversy at all. Perfect. Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Thank you. And as ever, Jonty, thank you very much as well. It was an interesting race in Russia, and hopefully we'll get a decent finish to the season now as well.
Yeah, well, we've got Suzuka next, and no matter what the race is like, we just love the track, so that'll be very great to watch.
Bit of 130R magic, definitely. Thank you very much, guys. I will inevitably talk to you at some point soon.
All right, see you later.
See ya. Cheers.
Lovely. Thank you very much once again to Jonty and to Stuart. And of course, for you guys for tuning in as well. I will be back. And for the watch along. Thank you very much to everyone that turned out for the watch along. If you are new to the channel watching this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We are so close to 49,000 and now starting to knock on the door of that big 50k. So thank you very much for your support both this weekend and just in general on the channel. It's been absolutely awesome. And don't forget to drop a like on the video as well if you've enjoyed. I will be back tomorrow, provided my computer plays ball. Fingers crossed. It's been okay today, so hopefully we should be right. We're back tomorrow with the debrief for the Russian Grand Prix. Then I'm back live with Jonty and Dan on Wednesday for probably more chat about that Pierre Gasly stuff and some other things as well that I've got planned. And then, of course, it's Japanese Grand Prix weekend. Heads up. Everything over the course of the weekend itself, so the live streams and things, if you're in the UK, will be much earlier in the day, so make sure you've got your coffee. I'm definitely going to need a few next weekend, but in the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.